Welcome to Secular Soup. Stay tuned for real talk about atheism, feminism, politics, parenting, and whatever the fuck else Amy and Amy want to talk about, because this is their show. And get ready for a whole lot of motherfucking profanity.
You want to hear a secret?
I won't tell anybody. Go ahead.
If I sit next to you, I'm going to get gonorrhea. It's going to jump into me. Just two ladies hanging out.
Is it okay for me to make fun of his neck waddle if I make fun of my own neck waddle?
I'm not sure.
That's a real ethical conundrum.
Would you know if you were born a lizard person, or can you be like adopted into the...
I think you know.
We're such professionals.
We really are.
Buckle up, bitches. It's time to have some soup.
I'm Amy with a Y.
And I'm Amy with an I.
And we're just two blueberries floating in a bowl of tomato soup. And this week we have a very, very special treat for you. We are hanging out with Mandisa Thomas of Black Nonbelievers. She is amazing. She's a powerhouse in the atheist freethinker skeptic movement. And she's done a lot of interviews lately on competitor podcasts that we won't list here. But on all of those other podcasts, you know, Mandisa, you kind of do a dive into what you do professionally and kind of your background. But we wanted to talk to you a little bit more about like parenting and some other stuff tonight. But before we do that, do you want to just give a very quick, who are you? What do you do? A plug for Black Nonbelievers, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. And thank you very much, Amy and Amy, for having me on the show. Once again, thank you. I'm Mandisa Thomas. I am the founder and president of Black Nonbelievers, which is based here in Atlanta, Georgia. I am originally a native of New York City, though. And as of March of this year, March 28th, to be exact, I became a full-time activist. I resigned from my full-time job and decided to take on activism and developing BN full-time, being a short for Black Nonbelievers, as well as dedicate myself to the secular movement full-time due to the increasing requests and demands. Recently, there was a kind of a minor little upset and setback with that. But, you know, I'm not going to get into that right at this moment. But yes, as of now, I am doing Black Nonbelievers full time, as well as I do have a Patreon to help support myself. And, you know, I post some good stuff on there. And interestingly enough, speaking of parenting, I posted an entry about my son, Miles, and just some things that, you know, some quirky things that we deal with around the house here. So that's just a bit about me.
So you have two kids, right? Do you want to tell us like the ages? When we're on the show, we usually don't give our kids name. Well, I mean, you're free to. Amy and I don't usually give our kids names just because we're paranoid. But yeah, if you want to tell us like how old your kids are.
I actually have 3 children.
Oh, 3. I thought you had 2.
I talk about my boys so much that,
yeah.
But yeah, no, I have a daughter. She's 20 years old. Mm-hmm. And my boys are 12 and 9. And my 12-year-old will be 13 in November. So yeah, we're going into that preteen, going into the teenage phase. So yay, fun.
I have a 12-year-old that'll be 13 at the end of this month.
Oh,
and he's entering that stage where you sit next to him and you're like, you should probably take a shower.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that too. And they're just
it's a special smell. It is special.
Yes. Yeah. And they're also like, ew, mom, where they used to hug you all the time. Now they're like, oh, mom, get away from me. I'm like, oh, well, the hell with you too.
He is still snuggly. I have one that's almost 16 and he bro hugs me. He'll come up sideways and he's like, all right, mom. I'm like, I love you. And he was like, uh-huh.
Yeah, I do that. My 14-year-old, almost 15-year-old does a side hug, you know, where it's kind of like the half hug. But the 8-year-old is all still trying to sleep in my bed with me at night. And just every time he sees me, I just need a hug. He's very sweet.
I have that too, but I have problems because, you know, I have a boyfriend that joins me. I'm like, this is probably not a good time.
You don't want your kids in bed with you and your boyfriend?
It's weird, right?
No.
Yeah.
So, Mandisa, would you say that you have like a parenting style? And I should say off the bat, because you're probably not familiar with every single episode of our show, but Amy and I are very open about how shit parents we are. Like, we're just the fucking worst.
Yeah, my style is described as threats and bribes.
Yeah, threats and bribes are good. But do you have like a parenting style, or what do you think of parenting styles in general?
We could probably go about 2 hours with that. Threats and bribes tend to work.
That's what we need.
Too. Yeah. But I tend to be very unorthodox because of my upbringing. I mean, I try to incorporate some of my upbringing, but also try to do things differently from my upbringing because it was pretty abusive growing up. But so what I try to do now, I have the good fortune to be able to be a little bit more flexible with my kids and how we communicate with each other. I do tend to treat them sort of like adults, like, look here, I will tell you something one time. I mean, a couple of times, I'm not going to always hold your hand through stuff. You have the ability to, my kids do watch a lot of some adult content. So yeah, we could be considered pretty shitty in that area too. My kids watch, they watch South Park, they watch Family Guy, they watch Rick and Morty. They know we drink.
Those are classics, right?
Yes, they are. Absolutely. And, we have a nice little bar at the house. They know we drink occasionally. I mean, they know not to touch it. I mean, we talk about a lot of stuff, and now it's so funny. The other day, I was talking with my sons, and we were discussing Isaiah, the 12-year-old, and we were saying how, I said, now, he has pubes, and he's like, ew, one of those. I'm like, well, I mean, you have them. I mean, they're your pubic hairs in your genital area, and we were cooking yesterday, and he happened to scratch his leg, and I said, make sure you wash your hands, before you, because, you were scratching near your, scratching your area, so we talk like that a lot around here.
I say their hands have been penis adjacent.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, you should probably wash your hands because they probably have been penis adjacent at some point. So please wash your hands.
So Mandisa, since you're here, because Amy and I could go off on a tangent all fucking night about everything. But yeah, no, when you were talking about the parenting thing, yeah, my kids watch South Park, but we have to tell them, don't tell the other kids that you get to watch it because I don't need their parents like calling us and talking about what shitty parents we are or Family Guy, all that stuff. And swearing is a tough one for me because I don't care if they swear, but it's more...
It's where you swear.
Like, yeah, when they're at school, I don't want them telling the teacher to go fuck herself or...
I mean, she might have to, though.
He might be right and she might be terrible, but
she might be.
Our latest thing is my 8-year-old constantly says, oh, Jesus, because I do it all the time.
Oh, yeah. My 8-year-old says, oh, God, all the time.
Oh, yeah. He says, oh, God, and just, oh, Jesus. And he says it with such force like I do. And I'm like, maybe not.
Because my thing is, God damn it, or God fucking damn it. I'm like, you guys need to not say this.
Yeah.
Listen to what mommy's saying and not what she's doing. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, my boys now, especially my youngest, hangs around his sister a lot now. She's back home from college. She just graduated. So, yeah, they're kind of hanging tough right now. So me and Dad really don't matter unless they need something. So I don't think I'm that much of an influence on them at this current time, which is good because I've learned over the years that, it's good for me to have my individuality as much as is important for them too. And sometimes I feel bad because I'm like, look, I really don't want to deal with y'all right now. Just leave me the hell alone. But, but
that's actually really important. It's important that they see you being you, even though you have a family.
Yes. And that's something that I learned early on that, I love my kids, but I don't want to be around them 24/7. And there were times where I realized it was okay for me to have a break. Like sometimes I'll eat by myself. I will go somewhere and be like, you know what? Fuck y'all. I'm just doing me right now. And that's perfectly okay.
Right. And that doesn't make you selfish or bad or wrong. It's healthy.
Right. Because, in this society, if you're a mom and you want to do something for yourself, then you are a really shitty parent. You are just the worst thing in the world. It's okay for dads to do that, but not moms. And I try to.
Who's watching your kids while you're working?
Right. Yeah. Like I am.
No one asked the dads that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I am a traditional. I'm a tradition breaker. So I like to try to break those traditions and those stigmas as much as I possibly can. I mean, hey, I'm
important.
I'm an open Black woman atheist who started an organization. So, I mean, that's breaking tradition right there. So, but
yeah, you're already breaking molds. So
Did a man sign the papers for you or with you?
that's so funny because I did have a co-founder when we started it locally in Atlanta, but he has since moved on, and it's pretty much been me. There have been men who have tried to co-opt, the operations and stuff, and have tried to speak for us and speak for me. But hey, I'm just that bitch who's like, you know what? No, fuck you. So yeah, I've
it's a
had
good quality to
say
have.
that a couple of times. Yeah.
Yeah. You know where you can take your opinions about this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I had more of that. Honestly, which kind of leads into something else I wanted to ask you a little bit about is just being in the movement. And this kind of applies to everything, but especially in the atheist movement. Why do you think it is so hard for women or, Black women specifically, but anybody in any kind of minority to get any traction? Like there's a lot of good voices out there like you. It seems like any fucking average white guy can pick up a microphone and have a platform and start doing well. And there's so many of the rest of us out here that, do you think it's just everyday sexism, or I don't know, do you think there's something else going on?
I think it's average every day, and most of it can be like subliminal. People are so used to the men being the, stronger voices.
Like
and
the voice of authority on situations.
Yes. And I think, because I've had to reconsider this as well, and how I pick, speakers and who I feature and such. And, but, I really do. And in seeing this, because there should be more people supporting Black nonbelievers as an organization. I really do think that there are people, I think there are people who are thinking that because they're not Black that they can't support us, or that there are things that don't apply to them, which isn't true for one.
No.
But I also think that we're still, I wouldn't say we're in our infancy, but there is still a lot of this patriarchy that is still very prevalent that may perhaps make our voices less important or that seem less important, because I could literally say something. I have been in rooms and meetings where I have said something and it was just kind of glossed over, but yet as soon as the man said it, it was like, oh, okay, yeah. But I'm like,
what a great idea.
That, right. Like
how come nobody thought of that before?
Exactly. And I think that there is a lot of very subliminal and very, very subconscious biases that people really aren't. Right. People say that they are, for equality and, they're for, especially, I see this a lot. There are a lot of white people who are very pro Black Lives Matter, very pro racial justice. But when it comes to speaking to myself and other people of color, their mannerisms suggest otherwise, or it still reeks of privilege. And it's like, you're going to have to check that as well, because that's going to be a huge barrier. Because to me, I could care less about what you say and what you stand for in public, but how you're treating people privately, who you support privately, makes a huge difference. And if you're not putting your best foot forward there, then nothing you say matters. And a lot of people are noticing that there is a lot of contradictory behavior, much like we see with a lot of these damn believers and pastors. And, we must remember that a lot of us came from that. And there's a lot of shit that people need to unpack when it comes along with, when it comes to that. There's still a lot of racial bias. There's still a lot of, gender
sexism
bias, sexism and all of that stuff. And so, it's very, and a lot of these things are still prevalent within the Black community as well. The men are always upheld more. And, the women are, the women are either degraded or just ignored and in favor of the male voice. And it's like, it can be very, very frustrating at times. I promise you. But yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, we're over it. We're over the voices.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like who needs to hear what the straight white man has to say? I'm sorry. No one cares.
Or it's like, I think some of them think that all we're going to do is just rail on white people all the time. And if you've ever heard me speak, you know that that's not what I do. But then too, it's always expected, just like in the church too, it's like the men are the ones that are being upheld, but the women are the ones doing all the work. But we're doing most of the work. And, I tend to rail against that. But of course, if I say something about it, I'm just this angry black bitch, could possibly lose support as a result. And, so there's just still a lot of people's misconceptions, their own, subconscious, biases, who they still will support over an organization like Black Nonbelievers, even though they say they support us. They want to know how they can increase diversity, but then they want to do it the route that either costs less or that takes the least amount of work, and that's just not going to cut it. And there's a lot of just people and their nature that is getting in the way of this, a lot of this stuff. But of course, as women, if we say something about this, oh my gosh, we can't do anything anymore and all this other crap. And I'm just like, oh gosh.
It's exhausting.
Why can't we just call women bitches now? Why do they get so mad about it? I don't...
Right.
Amy and I call each other bitches constantly, but
sometimes I'll say bitch, sometimes. And I just find that, yes, there are times when women may go overboard and think that we're not supposed to say these things, or that we're not supposed to, like I said, we're not supposed to use
Amy
profanity.
And I have totally co-opted bitch.
Yeah. And we're just like, the thing is being able to do it on our terms and knowing when to say when. There are some people who don't know in which spaces to say stuff and when not to say stuff. And it's usually a lot of men who don't know when to draw that line. But
they need to learn to read the room.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to teach my kids. I'm like, read the room, kids.
Yes.
Is anyone laughing? You're not funny. You need to stop.
Yes. And it's not just that you don't just get to hear things in your own voice all the damn time, especially if you don't want anyone coming at you like that. I'm noticing that too, is that there are a lot of people who like to say whatever the hell they want, but you can't say whatever the hell you want to them. And I'm just like, look, there really is that. If you wouldn't like it, don't fucking do it.
You're like, you opened this. You opened this discussion.
Right.
I'm going to join in.
Yeah. And,
I feel like there's a lot of that. The whole, with what you see with people complaining about free speech now is you have so many people who just want to say whatever the fuck they want to say. But if anybody gives them any pushback, then what about my free? They don't seem to get that. Yeah, you can technically say whatever you want to. You're still going to get some pushback from that. And that doesn't mean that anyone's taking your rights away.
There's going to be.
You can't control people's reactions.
Yeah, they're as free to say what they want back to you as you are.
Right. They also have freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I really wanted to talk to you about, Mandisa, is the differences between things that I guess you need to do as a Black mother that are different than how Amy and I have to do things as white parents. Like, for example, I don't. When you talk about Black Lives Matter, I have 2 white boys, and I've had discussions with them about Black Lives Matter and about how, what it all means and what started it. And as a mom, like, I live in a small town that's very homogenous, and I don't have to worry that often about what happens if my kid gets drunk and does something stupid or gets pulled over for no reason at all. It's just not something that crosses my mind, but it's something I try to talk to my kids about so they're more aware of the privilege they have and what that actually means, I guess, in society. What are your thoughts on that? Or what are things that I guess are different about the way you kind of are forced to think about as a parent that we might not have to, I guess?
Well, yeah, I have to, especially when my sons get older, I may have to caution them that some white police officer may mistakenly walk into their apartment and shoot and kill them. I mean, that is something that is a reality that even though my kids have it better than I did growing up, that there are still things related to being Black that they do have to be aware of, and especially when they go into certain parts of the country. We're fortunate that where we live now, even in a still somewhat largely Republican county in Georgia, there's a lot of progression here, but they need to understand that that isn't the way it is for a lot of places in this country. And there are a lot of things that they will need to look out for and be aware of, specifically as it pertains to them being Black, that, they may perhaps be pulled over unnecessarily more than someone who is white. And we can talk about, things have changed. Yes, they have changed, but not to the point where they have gone away. And so,
it's changed, but it's not fixed.
Yeah, exactly. And also, they have to be aware of when they start dating, depending on who they date. And, just depending on what it is that, that these are things that, they still must be aware of, that there is a lot that's still going on in this country. And there's still a lot of bias against Black folks. And yes, so we do have to be aware, and especially with them, with them being raised in a very secular household, with me being openly, atheist. I mean, my kids have been featured, in some of the news media clips that I've been in. And so, people are going to be somewhat aware of who they are. And then also knowing their rights, knowing that they don't have to take shit if they don't, they don't have to know, like you said, reading the room, knowing when to say when, but also knowing how to stand up for themselves is going to be very, very important. And also learning how to utilize a system that was initially not designed to work in our favor. There's ways that they can be smart about it, without it being detrimental to them. It doesn't mean that they have to cower or suck up to anybody or to give up a part of themselves, but knowing when. I mean, these are a bunch of conversations. Right. There's a bunch of conversations that I need to have with them as when it comes to, race, when it comes to sex, when it comes to all of that stuff. So yeah, we continue to have these conversations here. And I think it's important for white parents to have them too, that, their children should be aware of when someone of a different background or someone of a different race is perhaps being discriminated against. This isn't a conversation that only Black parents should have. These are conversations that all parents should be having, and for them to just be aware of it. It doesn't mean that, they have to, that they don't have to feel some sort of way, but at least being aware of what's going on and what they could possibly encounter. And if they see their counterparts engaging in that, then they need to check them on it as much as they can, because that's a huge problem. There's a lot of white folks doing a lot of shitty stuff, but yet, some others are just like, they're either making excuses or, well, they don't know or they don't mean it. And you're not saying, look, no, this is wrong. Stop it.
Right. That's that locker room talk argument.
Yes.
You can't make excuses. You have to say, you're being shitty. You need to stop.
Yes. Yes. And that there could be.
Yeah, I've told my kids that. I'm like, if you hear something, you have to say something, because this is not okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And there does need to be repercussions for people who openly do that stuff, especially now. There was a time where
there haven't been consequences. There have been these bubbles around people for so long. They've been living consequence free.
Yeah, I think as a parent, I try to have, especially with my older son now, but I try to have discussions about how he can make things better. I guess how he can be helpful. Like, if you're in a group, and it's hard here because like I said, it's such a homogenous area. When I grew up in the town I live in now, and it was just all white people. Like, we didn't even have any Jewish people here. It was that bad. And you kind of grow up in a small town thinking, especially when you come from a family like mine, you think that, well, you're not racist because your parents taught you that you don't discriminate against people based on race. And that's the most thought you've ever put into it. So you think, well, good, I'm not racist. That's enough. I don't consciously think about people based on the color of their skin. But now we're having all these discussions about internal bias. And it's hard because you kind of have a generational divide too between people like my parents who think, who don't even understand what you're telling them when you say internal bias, or, they don't want to acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
I had a long conversation with my Mormon mother when she was here a couple weeks ago, and she was talking about affirmative action and how it discriminates against her.
Oh, God.
And I was like, how do I explain this to you in a way,
where she'll get it and not be defensive immediately?
Right. And so basically what I told her is, sure, you might be turned down for a job, but when you walk out of the house and go into a gas station, you're still white.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, oh, okay. I was like, that's it. Like, literally, that's it. That's your privilege right there. You need to acknowledge that and be aware of that.
Yeah,
I think this is a problem in the atheist movement specifically because you have people, like I had a discussion with a friend of mine, a white guy, and we were talking about privilege. And I tried to make I said, if I go into a store, nobody is going to make me put my purse down because they assume I'm going to shoplift, or nobody's going to follow me around because, it just doesn't happen to me. And I said, but if I were a Black woman, I can't guarantee that same thing wouldn't happen. And my friend, who's very skeptical atheist, looks at everything skeptically, his response is, yeah, but you can't know that for sure. You can't prove that. How do you prove that if it was role was reversed, things would be... And it's like, at what point do people use their common sense and what's going on around them I think skeptics are so into, well, prove it to me, show me the data. And until you can show me the data, then I'm not going to believe that this is an issue.
Well, actually, and there is a lot of data on it too. And let's take, for example, a most recent thing, like for example, with me quitting my job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, I receive a lot of accolades, I receive a lot of moral support, but realistically, most of the people who actually have paid jobs in the secular movement are white. There's no getting around that. There is a privilege surrounding that there are that very few people refuse to acknowledge. There is a, and there have been a few that have been employed, but they either aren't anymore or they've had to deal with so much bias within these organizations regarding certain issues. Now, me, for example, yes, I am no stranger to hard work. However, how much harder should it be for me, someone who has done a lot of volunteer work in this movement? There are a lot of people now who look to me as, a go-to, look to me as someone who, if you want to know about this or if you want to discuss this, you can talk to Mandisa about it. She's this, that, and the third. But it's okay for me to speak on it. But the idea of actually having me employed in this movement, I have to wonder, or being able to support myself strictly on activism is still there seems to be a hesitation about that. And it's like, granted, my husband has a good job. He's able to support our family, but I've always, contributed to our household. And this movement has become so important to me. And it's not like no one owes me anything, but considering what I have put into this movement, what does it take for me to be able to secure the same type of paid opportunities that other people in this movement has? And that must be a conversation that is had. And I've seen some regarding a certain issue where people are like, oh my gosh, there's race and there's bias against white men. I'm like, are you kidding me? There's
Seriously?
bunch of, there is a bunch of, I'm like, it's sometimes it's
those poor men.
Right. Yeah.
When will they ever get a break?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, at
what point in time is it going to be okay for them?
Right. And meanwhile, I still have to, basically hustle and make sure that I'm able to support myself and my organization's activities, especially when people say they need us. But it's like, well, it can't go that far if people aren't sufficiently supporting us. Right. Yes, exactly. And this idea that, us calling it out is us, we're the ones being shitty as a result. And so, again, there are a lot of good people in this movement, but there are some things that fairly need to be called out here.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've done that with the other podcasts before. We're like, why are these other male podcasts getting so much more than us?
Yeah, I was going to say, Amy and I just were talking about this. Like, we feel like, and I don't know how deep I want to get into this because some of them may listen, but I feel like like I said before, you take any white guy and put a microphone in front of them, and it seems like they get all this support. And they don't have to, I don't feel like they have the stigma as much about the money aspect of it, that they're asking for money or they're trying to keep the show going by, whereas when we do it, it's unseemly somehow. Like women shouldn't be.
Well, especially when we use foul language, we're not being ladylike.
Right.
Yeah, but I look at some other podcasts that I feel like are equivalent, or like we're doing the same types of things. The only difference being we're women saying it. But like, why is all the support going to these other similar types of things that are doing the same things we're doing? And we have some great supporters that are, we have some awesome fucking fans and some awesome patrons. But I don't know if you find this too, but it almost seems like if you're a woman and if you're in a movement like this, you're supposed to just be doing the work for the good of the movement. And if you bring money into it, that's somehow not for us to do.
When you solicit for money, then you're just,
if you try to get paid for what you do.
Yeah, that's absolutely what, I've dealt with and what I'm dealing with now, because, there is, and I have to check myself on this resentment that I'm feeling. And that has grown because, there are people who want you to support what they do, and they say they support you, and, they tell you that your input is valuable. But yet when you tell them that, hey, you need to pay me, because now I'm at the point where, now you do need to pay me, especially with the things that have happened this year. I mean, I have, and I mean, granted, this is, sometimes I'm self-conscious about, promoting myself, but at the same time I should. I mean, I won the Humanist Association's Person of the Year Award. I was on the cover of the Humanist magazine. I was in Playboy magazine. So there are a lot of things that have happened that are good that I deserve to be compensated and paid for. Now, at this point, will people be willing? I mean, it seems like some have stepped up, which is great. But yeah, it's like, oh, well, we're just supposed to be able to, to do this and do it as a labor of love. And it's like, no, love isn't going to pay the bills. Accolades aren't going to pay the bills. Yeah. Like I said, I have 3 children to still support. I mean, there is a lot that I have to do. And granted, well, some people could say, well, maybe you should have held on to your job a little bit longer. And that's one of the reasons why I held on to it for like 7 years after Black Nonbelievers was started. I mean, I was working my full-time job simultaneously to growing the organization, raising my children, and supporting my husband who has sickle cell anemia. So there is a lot that is going on in my life that really could use more support that I am getting. And I don't want to, again, and it's almost like, well, I'm not just going to be begging every moment, but really there are this work does need to be paid. So, I mean, I'm just hoping
and I think it needs to be valued, and paying shows that it's actually valuable work, and it's your time is worth money.
Yeah,
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like you said,
and you've put a lot into it.
Well, not only have you put a lot into it, but you've gained all of these years of knowledge, and you give good talks, and you bring a lot to the table, and people should be willing to compensate that. And having to say that shouldn't be. I wonder sometimes if it goes along with the whole, when we were talking earlier about being a mom and that defining you. And, I feel like there's so much in our culture that if you're a mom, you're supposed to be putting 110% of your effort into your kids. And being a mom is supposed to be your entire identity, and everything comes second. And so if you're doing anything else...
That should be your Facebook name. It should be your kid's name. And then it was like...
My kid's is mom.
Apostrophes mom.
Sharing the memes about how much you love being a mom. But you're right. Like the minute you try to do something else, or do something that's for you, or do something that makes money, you're
best
selfish.
Thing that ever happened to me was shared custody. And that made me feel like such a monster when I first realized that. But honestly, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Having them not in the house. It's awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Well, and having time that you can just devote to the things you need to do.
Absolutely. And interestingly enough, one of my best times of the year is when the kids go away for the summer. They go to New York every year. and they spend about 2 months with the grandparents. And, that is some
beautiful thing. And
jealous.
That's wonderful. It's a wonderful thing.
And as they've gotten older.
And part of you feels really guilty for a second. And then you're just like, wait a second, this is amazing.
Yeah. It really, really is. And I've grown to value my quiet time, like when I do have to travel and when I do have to, when I'm invited to speak and, I'm away from the kids. I mean, that is some good quiet time for me because really, I mean, I am an introvert as well. I do like to just be alone and just have that time to just, oh gosh, I can yell at myself if I want to. I can just do whatever the hell I want. And that time is so good. It's so nice. And also it's good for the kids too, because they learn that they should be learning that sense of independence early, that we're not always going to be around. And so it'll be good for them, to learn how to either be by themselves or with other people. And they'll know that we're just a phone call away, or if they need something, we'll be there. But, in that time, I mean, that's, I'm not always going to be around. Doesn't make me a neglectful parent. Hopefully it'll show them that when they get older and they, whatever they decide to pursue, my kids love to travel. They love to travel too. And so when they get older, they can have the option to do this if they want.
Yeah, that's one thing I actually wanted to ask you about was because you travel so much and you give talks and you're probably gone a lot. Do your kids give you a lot of shit about that? Or how do they deal with it when you, like, because I know with my kids, if I go to a conference or I do something, it's starting to be more like, oh, that's just what mom does and it's fine. And they're with dad for the weekend and it's just not a big deal. But how do your kids handle it when you travel so much or when you're gone, and do they just take it all in stride?
They do. Sometimes they're like, Mom, where are you going this week? Or, where are you going this weekend? And sometimes they're like, oh, we wish we could go with you. But then there are times they're just like, yeah, okay, bye. It just depends with them. But they've gotten used to it. They've, especially now that I travel more, that I've, that's actually increased over the years. So now it's actually, just, okay, Mom, bye. They're used to it. I mean, if there's something within driving distance, sometimes they may want to go. Yeah, my 12-year-old's looking at me now. He's like, yeah, you're talking about it. But I mean, when I took them to Dragon Con, they got bored easily. And I don't know how that happened because that's such a huge convention and there was so much for them to do. But, there are times like I took them to NanoCon with me, my boys. I took them to NanoCon with me and they enjoyed that. So if there's something within a reasonable distance, I will take them with me. But now they have a lot going on. They're into their electronics now and also into watching TV and stuff. So now if I go, they're just like, yeah, okay, bye.
Yeah, mine barely notice I leave when I'm gone.
Mine have gotten to the point where it's they tell me that I'm selfish because it's bad though.
You're in a
different situation. It's a different situation.
Yeah. Mine, my younger one has a hard time just with the podcast because we record once a week and then we try to do bonus episodes and then we'll go on other shows. Sometimes we
record like 3 times a week.
There's times we're recording 3 times a week. And when we started out, my 8-year-old was very just pissy every single time we recorded. And
mine too.
But I did sit him down the other day and I'm like, look, I do this because hopefully this will make us some extra money. I like doing it. And we're hoping that at some, we make some money off this. And that's good. That means we can, have extra money to do things. And since I had that talk with him, he's actually been a lot better. Like, oh, you're going to record now? Okay. And he'll give me really good tips for recording. Like,
don't let Amy get you drunk.
No, he's like, what you guys should do is do a triple dog dare where you put things in your mouth and talk while you're eating things. And he'll just come up with random bullshit. And for a while he was like, I don't care if I ruin your podcast. He would just get upset because I'll tell him don't stomp on the floor when I'm recording. And I don't care if I ruin it. But now that he found out there's a money aspect, he's much more chill about it.
Oh yeah, they love that.
Yeah, I had one that came in the room once. He's like, stop recording.
Oh gosh.
stop. It was the drama. And I turned to him. I was like, what is so important? He was like, you love the podcast more than me. I'm like, that's not true at all. And well, he wanted me to drive him to his dad's house because that's where the video game was that day. And so it was this whole thing. I'm like, why are you being so dramatic about this? This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I was invited to participate in a symposium in Houston the weekend of my son's birthday, my 12-year-old's birthday, and Isaiah, his name. And so I told him, I said, I probably won't be, I won't be in town for your birthday, so I'm hoping that'll be okay. And now he's just like, well, does that mean I can get this?
Okay,
I'm like, you're trying to
what can I get out of it?
Yeah, so you're trying to get the guilt gift.
How guilty does mom feel? Let's gauge
they're
this.
at the point now where they're exploiting that. And I'm like, you little, I got you. But
kids know how to exploit a weakness.
My son's planning his birthday's coming up at the end of this month, and he was like, what's my budget? I was like, I'm a single mom. Your budget is probably nothing.
A cake from the grocery store if you're lucky.
Yeah. All of my love. I mean, what?
Right.
What? I mean,
yeah, mine's my 8-year-old especially has just been nonstop lately with I want a laptop. I want a laptop so bad because his brother, my older son who's 14 has one because he's 14 and you just can't live if you're 14 and don't have a computer, I guess.
Yeah.
But the 8-year-old, I'm just like, I'm not like, I don't have an extra couple of $100 and I keep trying to explain to him, it's not that I don't want to get you the thing that I know you really want. We just can't afford it. So now every day it's, I just want a laptop so bad. I just really want a computer so bad. I'm like, well, keep wishing and maybe the fairy will come. And no.
Now, so I do think it's important that people understand that, we do have children and that, as much as, we would like to do all of the things, sometimes we just cannot. And I think it's important when it comes to, considering, our income, considering, what it is that we need to do, especially for them, that we should not be shortchanged. Especially as to what people say they appreciate about us and what we provide. I just don't think it's right for us to be shortchanged, especially as women, as moms, because there's a lot on us. And, I think things like that should be taken into consideration. But I'm sorry, I just need to get that out. So.
I agree. No, I agree.
You're saying all the things we've been thinking.
Yeah, it's a huge aspect of who you are as a person. And takes up so much of your time. Before I take a job, before I do anything, it's always, I start thinking of logistics of taking them to school, picking them up from school. Cause I have one kid that I have to take because we're too close to the school, but it's too far for her to walk. So I sit there and think about logistics. I think about time. I think about dinner. I think about all of that. And that's not something that I think not necessarily men, but I'm going to say men have to think about.
Right. And then also too, it doesn't mean that we cannot do the work, but I mean, should we?
Exactly. It just means there's a lot more thought that goes into every decision.
Right. And I just think that there are good opportunities for people to show that, yes, there are working moms in this movement. They are leaders. We represent a lot of people in this movement. And if you continue to push a certain demographic, then you are going to lose those who actually need to see the visibility, and we need to be more represented in leadership, and what we do does need to be supported a whole lot more.
I agree.
And like you said before, women tend to be the ones that show up and do the work. And if we're continually made to feel like our contribution isn't valued, then you're right. The whole movement is just going to lose a huge segment of people. And we need to decide, do we really care about keeping all these people in the movement, or do we want to keep it just your average white guy, I don't know. I feel like the the atheist movement in general needs to decide if they actually value having diverse voices or if they don't, because it sure seems like they
That's
don't.
what it feels like it's coming down to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll say this too, and I might catch some flack for this, because even though there may be some show of diversity, there's still a tendency for certain things to be whitewashed, that
I agree.
there are certain aspects of, oh, well, they happen to be the best, they just happen to be, So I'm not sure. I think there's still a subconscious bias there too, that people do need to consider a whole lot more, even if it isn't intentional. There are some things that do need to be considered a whole lot more than they already have been. But I'm sorry, what were you going to say next, Amy? Amy with the Y.
We have no idea what we were going to say next, because that's how our show works.
There's no idea.
We totally wing it. We're about at the 50-minute mark. So I was going to, when we wrap up our show, we usually, give a shout out to our patrons that we have. But I want you to plug your Patreon again and just do kind of a wrap up of anything else you want to say or any thoughts you have. Or I just want to give the stage to you to basically say whatever you want to before we wrap the show up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. My Patreon is Mandisa Latifa, patreon.com/Mandisa Latifa. You have to type in the link, because you can't search me on Patreon because I have adult content. And I tend to do a lot of writing.
Yeah.
I do some cursing, I do some writing that isn't necessarily considered age appropriate. So,
you do sexy stuff.
Yeah, I considered showing my boobs at one time, but hey, that might not be a good thing for me to do, even though I wouldn't mind doing but I like telling people I'm in Playboy with no context, because that's a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, I have encouraged people doing those types of shoots before. I would love to do one. Similar.
It would be empowering.
Yeah, it's very empowering. So
absolutely,
I do share content that may be considered sensitive. So you have to type in the link.
Well, we can put a link in our show notes too. Yeah. So people can find it right away.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I think you'll enjoy, the writing on there, just simply because I tend to, spill some thoughts on there that I can't necessarily share with the general public. And also it's a way to help support my activism and give people a glimpse as to why I do what I do. But also I encourage everyone to visit Black Nonbelievers, our website, and support us there. It's blacknonbelievers.org. We're all over social media, on Facebook, on Twitter. Our handle is B Nonbelievers. The B and the N are capitalized. And I really, really like to thank you all for having me on the show. I look forward to it being released. And Patreon, Mandisa Latifa, blacknonbelievers.org.
We are so happy that you agreed to come on, because I've admired you for so many years. And
same. I actually have seen you, or I was at one of your speeches once. It was Skyped in, but I've seen you speak before.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
And you give a hell of a speech. So.
Thank you.
You did. You gave a hell of a speech, and it changed the way I think about a lot of things.
Thank you. And what's interesting is that sometimes when I speak, I'm like, wow, it seems like sometimes I feel like I'm a broken record, but it's like, really, there's still a lot of things that are very, very relevant. And there are people who still haven't thought about these things and why they're important. And I am glad that people do like what I have to say and how I say it, because, I tend to be a bit unorthodox in the way I speak. I try to be as professional as possible, but I know that I am as intersectional as you can get. Not only am I a Black, I'm atheist, I'm Black, I'm a woman, I'm a mom, that I am living everyday things that a lot of other people are as well. And so, there's a lot that we all can relate to. And I think that it is important to show, like you said, those very, very human faces, that come along with, with just being us. And, I definitely appreciate every platform that I am given. And so, I mean, this and everyone that I do engage with, because there are a lot of folks who, they say a lot of things publicly, but then when you see them in person or when you see them outside of that public sphere, they're really shitty people. And, I just try not to be a shitty person in general. I mean, that doesn't mean I don't have shitty moments, but I just generally try not to be a shitty person. It just doesn't make me feel good to be, to be a shitty individual. And so, but for some people, they're okay with that. And I'm just like, wow. And you wonder why our movement does have a bad rep, because y'all are okay with not caring
filled with a lot of shitty people.
Yeah, it is. And they don't, and they tend not to care about other people. Even when they say they care, their actions show something different. And that it's time that changed. I mean, really, there's a way for us to be, direct and tactful and, and really care about what we do, all while letting our hair down in the process. Why is it that we as women know how to fucking multitask more than other people? It's like, gee.
Seriously. How hard is it?
Yeah. Well, we thank you so fucking much for coming on here. I told Amy, I'm like, I talked to Mandisa and she said she'd be on the show. We were both just so excited.
I was like, wait, because I didn't recognize your name right off the bat. And I looked you up and I was like, I've heard you speak before. And I was like, okay, cool. I know exactly who she is. I know from that speech, the things you made me think about and the way you made me feel. And I was really excited to talk to you.
Well, yeah, the thing I like about the way you speak is that it is so real and it's not, you don't feel like you're getting a boring lecture. It's, you throw some swear words in there. I like that. I appreciate it. And it's always interesting. It's not a boring lecture. It's, you feel like you're really talking just like you would talk to anybody else on an average day, but it's in a speech. And I encourage not that there's anybody listening to this podcast right now that has any power to hire people, but if they did, they should hire you to give a speech. So,
hey,
but
definitely.
So
we've talked about, we should just have our own convention. We should just have our own convention sometime.
Yeah, I'm sure that's not a lot of work.
Right.
Probably
and
easy.
I'm excited to be announcing very soon a convention or conference that I'm coming up with Sakibu Hutchinson that I'm working on with her for 2019. And
nice.
I'm very excited to be announcing that in the very near future. And we hope that as many people will support it and attend as possible. It will be.
Yeah. Well, make sure that we know so we can.
Where will it be?
We're planning for it to be in Chicago. So, I know that's not too far from Minneapolis, and it's very, it's very travel friendly.
It's far from me.
Yeah. But one of the things,
poor Amy's stuck in Texas, so
yeah. But one of the things that we've always,
I'm stuck.
Oh, yeah. Well, Texas. Well, yeah. Hopefully, there should be some decent travel deals to Chicago from Texas. We hope. Fingers crossed.
Oh, yeah.
But I will definitely.
Hopefully by next year at this time, we'll be filthy rich from all the money we're raking in from doing a podcast, because apparently that's where the money is. So it won't be a problem. But
because apparently it's illegal to monetize some talent.
Yeah. Right.
Well, thank you so much. Our time is about up. I want to just quickly say thank you to our patrons, if I can find them on my computer machine, because I am not a professional. So give me 1 second, patrons. If you would like to join us, we're on patreon.com/secularsoup. So we will put a link. We always have a link for that in our show notes, but I'm going to put a link to Mandisa's Patreon in there as well. So if you would like to support her, and we encourage you to do that because she is doing much more valuable work than we are, I guarantee it. We've got our $1 a month patrons. We've got the Dumb All Over podcast, Ryan, Jesse, EncyclopediaDumbAmerica.com, Wendy, and the By Any Means podcast. Our $2 a month patrons, we've got Sarah, Verlaine, Andy, Rebecca, Kimberly, and Nathan Dickey. $3 a month level, the Wayward Willis podcast. The $4 a month level, we've got Elvin Engineer, Dr. Dylan Medical Detective, and Larry Yelling Man. At the $5 Sock. I fucked up again. Okay, at the $5 a month level, we've got Marissa, Alexa McCool, Silly Goose, Amy's Boring Sister, Yesh, Jerry, and Alan. At the $10 a month level, where you will get your own personalized soup bowl with or without dicks drawn on it, depending how I feel when I make your bowl. We have got Randall, Dwayne, Alice at the Ask and Tell Project, askandtell.com, and our 12th favorite, Rich. I'm going to go with 12th this time.
That's fair.
And then our favorite person ever, because she's at the $20 a month level and is amazing, Ashley, we love you. You're still our favorite person and our favorite patron because you give us the most money. So you are amazing. So without further ado, Amy, if you want to take us out.
I am ready. Or I was. Hold on.
See, we're terrible, Mandy, so we don't know what we're doing.
No, I'm ready.
Go ahead.
I'm ready. And that's all we've got for now. Thanks to our fabulous listeners who put up with us droning on week after week. If you enjoy our delightful bitchcraft, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and send us all your monies on Patreon. You can find us on those platforms by using the Google machine. It's not hard. This week, your donations will go to ravioli because I'm craving it.
Sounds good.
If you want to tell the world how awful this episode was, join our Secret Soup Talk Facebook group. If you want to tell us to fuck off personally, you can send an email to secularsouppodcast@gmail.com. Please rate and review us on iTunes, Facebook, and wherever else you can review things like this. It will help us spread the soup gospel far and wide. And hey, tell your friends. As always, you
just can't do it, Amy.
I almost made it.
Never do it.
I know. As always, we'll leave you with the vocal stylings of Mr. Eli Bosnick.
Secular soup creed. Soup is the ultimate virtue. It's delicious, nutritious, patriarchy smashing, racism fighting, warm and fuzzy, human affirming, fun having, anti-theist, glitter throwing, tummy satisfying, pair of new shoes fulfilling, diversity seeking, happiness. Minestrone, beef and barley, chicken broth and split pea, gazpacho, tomato, clam chowder and potato, chicken noodle, beef noodle, egg drop and ramen cup, miso, gumbo, leek and pho. Grab a bowl and taste the magic. Slurp even this.